Hi, Helen. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks very much for having me.
You're welcome. It's great that we sort of get to connect through this Zoom sort of atmosphere at the moment. I can see you've been for a swim this morning. Where did you go for a dip?
So I'm based in Cambridge in the UK, and we're very fortunate that we have a Lido, an outdoor pool that's one of the longest Lidos in Europe at 91 meters long.
Oh.
So I was swimming in there this morning.
Oh, wow. Is that chlorinated or freshwater or?
Yeah, no, it's chlorinated, but it's not heated. So they've actually extended the hours so that usually it's already closed by now because it's getting cold here. But they've extended the hours because so many people wanted to swim through the winter.
Right. Amazing. Wow. And is that where you train most of the time, or is that just with open water pools being open at the moment, or where do you sort of base yourself for your master's training?
Well, usually I am in an indoor swimming pool just locally to me at a local school. There's a pool there, but I have actually been swimming outdoors in the Lido all summer. It really stemmed from, the pools being shut in lockdown, and then there were sort of restrictions in terms of, who could go. The lanes were quite full. So I actually ended up doing a lot of my training outdoors in this 91-meter pool, which had its challenges. But, the weather was quite warm, and I had some really good sessions out there. And it's so beautiful going down first thing in the morning. The sun's coming up. There are trees surrounding the pool, and it's really beautiful. So I've really, really loved it. And I've actually found it quite difficult going back into an indoor pool in September.
Yes. Yeah, I bet. What's the water temperature in the Lido?
It was 16 this morning.
Okay.
16 degrees, which I've just found I struggle doing any length of time swimming front crawl, particularly in that I start to sort of get slower and slower, which I put down to the cold, not my ability. So I actually wore a wetsuit for the first time today. I haven't worn one at all, and it meant I didn't get too cold. So.
Yeah, well, it sounds good. Coming into an English winter, though, you will need to move indoors, I suppose.
Well, it's funny you say that, because actually I became a winter swimmer last year, and I swam in the river in Cambridge once a week throughout the river. I would certainly say it was not what I call swimming. It was more of an experience. But I have got, quite used to cold temperatures, which is something I never, ever thought I would do. But it was actually a wonderful thing to do with lockdown going on. And something that I would really recommend to people to try, because I would never have classed myself as somebody who would ever do something like that at all. But I think with, the COVID situation that we've had, it was like, okay, God, why not? I'll try. Let's do something different. And I've got so much out of it. It really was a great experience.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's exploded cold water swimming over this COVID time, with people trying to find other bodies of water to swim in. And, I love reading all people's sort of experiences and the euphoria that they feel just through having that cold water swimming. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would describe it as euphoric for me. Some people I know really do feel like that. I actually think it's for me, it was a chance to be in the natural environment of the river and learn about the river more than I've ever looked at it through a different pair of eyes before, and we would spot things and see things that I just would not have noticed before.
Yes.
And by the time I warmed up, then I felt absolutely great. But it did take me a little while to warm up afterwards, because it did get down to 3 degrees, was the coldest I swam in.
Yes, that is cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. And so one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast, aside from your master's swimming, which we'll talk about, is because you're a sports psychologist who works with a lot of elite athletes. And I thought that would be really interesting for our master's swimming community. How did you find yourself becoming a sports psychologist? What led you there?
I was a primary school teacher for 25 years and working with sort of children aged between 5 and 11. I enjoyed teaching. I got a lot out of it, but always I had this feeling of, could I do something else? But I don't know what it would be. And I got to the point in teaching where I think I was ready for something new. I felt like I'd done it for a long time. and was always kind of thinking about it and on the lookout for things, but just didn't know what to do. And through swimming, I was training with 2 elite Ironman female athletes at the time, who was a great experience to swim with them. But I was very interested in their psychology, because they very much swimming was their kind of weakest discipline in triathlon, and they'd sort of then get on the bike, and it was almost like their race then began. Right. And we talked about the psychology of that quite a bit. And I'd done a psychology degree as my first degree back in my sort of early 20s. And I just kind of got interested in it again. And I did a bit of Googling one day and saw that there was a master's in sport and exercise psychology, which didn't exist really, or a master didn't exist when I was back in the day when I was doing my first degree. And I read the sort of spec and thought, that looks really, really interesting. And because I'd done a psychology degree, it meant that I could apply and do it. I didn't think about it too hard. I'm not an overthinker. And I talked about it to my husband. He said, yeah, why don't you go for it? And suddenly, aged 41 or whatever I was, 42, I found myself doing this master's course, distance learning. And I remember I had such imposter syndrome. I remember thinking, I haven't studied for 25 years. I haven't written an essay for so long. Am I really going to be able to do this? And but I started it. It was difficult. It was hard, but I absolutely loved it. And I started applying some of the principles to my own swimming. And I just had something new in my life that I was thoroughly enjoying. And then I suppose I sort of carried on teaching part-time, did my master's part-time. And then it was kind of, I got to a point where I thought, am I going to continue with this? And can I make a career out of it? And it kind of went from there, really.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great story. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I and in a way, I feel like I've never really looked back from that point. I was so enjoying it. I mean, I had 3 children at the time. It was, don't get me wrong, it was very difficult balancing everything. I used to get up at sort of 4 a.m. and sort of be writing an essay before going to teach, before sorting out my children in the evening, but because I was loving it, and it was something so new, I was very motivated to do it. And so I sort of ran my master's alongside my teaching, and then I sort of started my own consultancy. And it got to the point where I was getting more and more psychology work. And so after a few years, I thought, right, this is the time. And I stopped teaching and went into sports psychology full time, and been running my own business since then.
Oh, that's amazing. And what predominantly, what type of athletes do you work with in the practice?
Do you know, all sorts of athletes, really. I mean, if I just look at my my client base at the moment, I'm working with a 10-year-old, and I'm working with an athlete who's just come back from Tokyo at the Olympics and the Paralympics. So I have in terms of age, ability, sport, an absolute range, and it doesn't matter to me. I love working with anybody, and no matter what their goals are and why they want to work in psychology, I just find it really fascinating.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting career. What do you find are the sort of the 3 most common sort of problems that you, without speaking obviously with people's personal cases, but just across the board, what sort of 3 common problems do people come to you with, or things that they want to work on?
I think one of the first ones I would say is anxiety over races or events that people have sort of got in their calendar, and they put it in the calendar, and then it's like, am I going to be able to do this? So that would certainly be one. Self-confidence is something I work on no matter what level the athlete is at. It's such a key ingredient for performance, and it comes out in conversations where people are anxious about things, and there are some really tangible things that you can work on with confidence. So that will certainly be something. Sort of routines as well, preparation and sort of pre-performance routines. That might include, well, it can include all sorts of things in a routine, but depending on what the client is presenting with, it may be that the routine is to help manage anxiety, before a race. It might be that they want to, increase their arousal levels and get themselves really pumped up before a race. It might be that they want to visualize the race beforehand. So depending on what we were working on, those kind of routines that people can put in place to give them confidence to then go out and execute the performance that they want to.
Yeah, you just touched on arousal. I remember from my old uni days, the optimum level of arousal. What do you do with someone who, so two ideas, when they come under aroused to a race and when they're over aroused? Can you give them any kind of strategies to bring them to the optimum level to race?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, the first thing I would do is talk about what is that optimal state. When have you had that golden moment where you feel like you're absolutely in the moment, which, I think most athletes would agree. You're always kind of striving for that, but sometimes it can be quite hard to actually emulate it when you want it. I mean, for athletes who are under aroused, I guess, in terms of, that level, I mean, it could be something as simple as music that they listen to, that can be something that can get people more aroused. Other people is another great one. Talking to the right people, that kind of network around you, I think, can be really, really important. I mean, I think particularly in swimming, there is so many kind of people on the pool deck, and tapping into people who can help you in that moment, I think can be really, really useful. I mean, the kind of athlete who's over aroused, feeling like, they're slightly out of control, possibly with their emotions. Again, some sort of relaxation technique, breathing technique, grounding technique, something like that can help to bring people back to the moment. Present thinking, particularly, there is can be really key, because often mind goes to the future or mind goes to the past, and that can raise anxiety levels depending on what, the what ifs and the uncertainty of the future, or the maybe something that's happened in the past that hasn't gone well, that can be in the mind. So trying to keep present as much as possible can be really helpful then as well.
Yes, I think it's reassuring to hear that those are sort of common things across all athletes, that it's not just, I think as athletes, and maybe even as masters athletes, we think we're the only ones experiencing those sort of feelings, but they are quite common across most different sports and different people, aren't they?
Oh, I mean, really common. I think, when I think of the people that I work with, it's similar themes with a 10-year-old than it is with somebody who's walking out into an Olympic final. We get nervous. We're human beings. It's when things matter to us and they're important to us, we are going to experience feelings of self-doubt, and I think it's really common, self-doubt. It's how you can learn to manage it to best effect, but to go into a performance without self-doubt, I actually think is probably unrealistic if it matters to you. So it's all about learning about yourself and how you respond to things, and are you responding in a way that's the best way for you? And as athletes, we're always looking to improve and get better at things. So it's like, well, can I improve how I respond? Is there something that I could change? Is there, even if it's a small thing, could it be something that might make a difference to me, and that in turn might then impact my performance?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, and just going back to something you said before about routine, I think during COVID, we've obviously a lot of athletes have lost that routine that they're sort of usually tied to, with obviously going to training sessions at the pool and meets that they know are coming up, and I think a lot of athletes, a lot of master swimmers are very goal driven. And because of that uncertainty around COVID, all those goals have disappeared. What kind of advice could you offer to someone like that who has that uncertainty around getting back in the water and getting back to racing?
Yeah, I know it's difficult, and it's really tough. I spent a lot of time as we came out of lockdown in this country, speaking to swimmers who were about to go back into the pool. And there was a huge amount of anxiety amongst swimmers about a whole range of things, because, as swimmers, we're very much routine driven, as you say. We're used to training, and we enter a meet and we prepare, and suddenly it's been removed from us and it's been taken away. I think an adjustment period is the first thing I would say to people, is that accepting that it's different and adjusting to it, and that can take time for different people. Trying to then, once you've kind of gone through that period, I think is trying to re-establish maybe some different goals, some different a different outlook, maybe a different perspective on what you've had before. And there's definitely been experience of loss for people, a loss of something that's, I certainly felt that, I sort of see it as quite part of my identity being a swimmer, and suddenly I wasn't able to do it. And that was hard. And so that kind of readjustment, I think, my example of sort of going to the river and doing some winter swimming, it meant I was still connected to water. It meant I was still connected to some people who I swam with, and we could talk about swimming. And I did a lot of that. And it meant that I still felt I was still kind of part of the swimming community, even though I couldn't actively go into a swimming pool. Yeah. So I think everybody has to sort of find their own way with it, really. But I think that sort of acceptance and then readjustment is probably the first port of call, I would say.
Yeah, that's sage advice. I like it. I think if I think about master swimmers, I think one of the unique things that we experience is that when we get older, our times start to get slower. It's very disappointing, especially when you compare it to your times when you were a teenager or younger. So you never reach that PB time, essentially. Mm-hmm. What's a way that master swimmers can deal with that kind of not sadness, but I suppose disappointment? How can they?
I think swimming is a sport that is so outcome driven. Times matter in terms of selection, in terms of getting into finals. It's really based around times, and I would certainly say, I think as we get older and we do get slower naturally, it enables us to use the opportunity, I would say, to focus on more processes, and actually that could be a healthy way of looking at it. If you're just constantly looking at the outcome and you're not achieving that outcome, time after time, it's very demoralizing. It's actually not going to make you feel good about yourself. It's not going to make you feel good about your swimming. So the more you can look at processes or process goals, the things that you're directly in control of, the things that you can look at to make improvements in, whether that's in your technique, whether it's in your nutrition, whether it's in your psychology, all those types of areas that you have control over, you can then have goals within that. And if you are looking at processes and seeing progress within those, I think you're much likely to be much more satisfied with your swimming than you are if you're constantly outcome driven.
Yes, I think that's right. I think holding on to the journey and the process that you're following to get there, and those outcomes with the times are sort of a happy bonus, I suppose. I think that's
yes, as well. Yeah, I think so. And I mean, one of the things that I think about the master swimming community is that it really is a community, and master swimmers have great friends from all around the countries where they live, where they've met people, and that's part of the experience of swimming. So I know that that's something that I have definitely used in terms of, okay, I'm going to this swimming meet this weekend, and a big part of this is that I'm going to see my friends and be, if I'm disappointed with my swims, I've got this, and this is a really big part of my life and important to me. So yeah, I think that's worth thinking about as well.
I think so too. That leads me down the path of asking how you got involved with master swimming to start with.
How did I? Well, I suppose I swam as a teenager in a swimming club, and absolutely loved swimming. It was something that I really enjoyed doing. I think one of the reasons I went into master swimming was because I always had a feeling that I never quite realized my potential as a young swimmer. My parents were quite big on schoolwork rather than swimming, and so I always wanted to do more training than I was actually allowed to do. And so I think there were, I sort of felt as a master swimmer, I was good at swimming, and it's always good to do stuff that you feel good at. So I wanted to get back into it, but I also wanted to think, well, what can I do what can I achieve as a master swimmer? Because I always felt like there was sort of something missing when I was younger, that maybe I could have gone quicker than I had have done. Maybe I could have taken it further than I had have done. So that's been a big driver for me. And I started in the 19 to 24 age group, which is we have here, which is not, you're actually classified as a master at 25 plus, but there were some masters competitions for 19 to 24 years, and that's when I started competing. And I've pretty much competed since then, apart from when I had my children. So I've never really had a break from it. So.
Wow, that's amazing. I love hearing stories like that. And over that time that you've been racing in Masters, what has been your favourite memory in racing?
Gosh, my favourite memory in racing. I actually think, yes, I have. And it was in Budapest when we went to the World Champs, and it was the first time I'd really been abroad, really, with Masters swimming. I mean, I absolutely loved it. If anybody listening has been to Budapest, I mean, it's like the swimming capital. It's just the swimming pool wherever you go. The people there love swimmers. The pool was amazing. And again, I was with great friends. I knew lots of people who were there, and it was an absolutely fantastic experience. I loved every single minute of it. And actually, it's kind of, my husband wasn't able to go, and he's a master swimmer as well. And I talked about it so much. And it's one of the things that we've agreed in the future that we're going to do. So our children this week actually my youngest has just left for university. So we're now officially empty nesters. And one of the things that we've decided to do to kind of help us through this period is to try and travel a bit more with swimming and go to events in different places. Of course, COVID has slightly put a halt on that for the moment, but that is something that we've planned to do, because I think you just get a different experience going to, another country and racing against people from all over the world. So that's something that is definitely in our plans.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like my husband and I. We're in a similar situation, and except my husband doesn't swim. He does athletics. So we probably will look at a few World Masters games, and he might do the running, I might do the swimming, but sort of outwardly to travel to that place and have an experience in another country. I think that's one of the great things about Masters, isn't it? You can sort of tack on a holiday at the end and really immerse yourself in the culture, and the people around in master swimming are just lovely, lovely people.
Yes, exactly. And I think it takes you to places that maybe you wouldn't necessarily visit. We've done a few swim runs actually in the last few years. And again, we've gone to countries that we probably never would have looked at going to. Yeah. And it's been such a great experience. So definitely something to continue with.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you are back in training, how many sessions would you do a week? Like, what's a typical week for you when we're not in lockdown and back in
I probably do about 4 to 5 sessions a week, I would say. And I do some of those with the Cambridge Triathlon Club here, because my husband's a coach there and the pool's just up the road. It's nice and convenient, but that tends to be aerobic front crawl, because triathletes don't do any other stroke apart from front crawl. And if they do, they complain about it. They don't really like it. And then I do the other sessions I do myself. And I have a guy, Glenn Christensen, who sends me sessions, breaststroke specific sessions, because breaststroke is sort of been my goal of trying to improve and get faster at that. So so I do a bit of both, club and things on my own.
Yeah. And 100 or 200 breaststroke, what's your sort of favorite?
100 breaststroke, definitely. 200 definitely feels a bit long for me. I've always classed myself as a sprinter, but that's another thing as a master, actually, that I think, talking about setting yourself new goals, is that because I was a sprinter when I was younger, I just assumed I would be a sprinter as a master, but actually, I know 100 meters is a sprint really, but I was always a 50-meter sprinter. So actually, I'm more successful at hundreds now than I am at 50s. So I've had new challenges there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, a lot of us lose a bit of speed as we get older, definitely. And I think a lot of people find that they push out to the longer events.
Yes, yeah. I'm not sure I would go over 200 with anything, but 200 is my limit.
And what would be your favorite breaststroke set? Give us a breaststroke set that you enjoy doing.
Oh, a breaststroke set that I enjoy doing. Let me think. What one have I done recently that I really enjoyed? Well, at the moment, I'm enjoying actually putting some sprint work in. So I did sort of doing a 50 and then 100 and then a 150, kind of twice through or something like that. So it's anaerobic. You're going as hard out. Long rest. And just short and sort of sharp, I guess, is probably my preferred. But my legs are suffering from having done that this week.
How far would you typically go in one session? How many K?
I tend to do about 3K in a session, 2.5 to 3K, probably if I'm doing a breaststroke set. I mean, having said that, I did a 5K at the weekend with the Tri Club. So with the Tri Club, they're my sort of what I call my whatever sessions. So they're the ones that, I'll just go with what's ever being set, depending on how long or short it is. But the breaststroke ones are kind of much more specific.
Yes.
That I think that's a psychological thing, having a whatever session. I just think it gives you flexibility within your week, so I say 4 or 5 sessions, so I always commit to 4, but I'll always have a whatever session. So it's like if I'm up for it, if I'm feeling motivated, if I've got time, I'll go and do the extra one, but if I haven't, it's whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah absolutely. And have you got any competitions on the horizon in Britain? Are you back to having masters comps on?
We are, not very many, but we are. So I did one a couple of weeks ago, which was, it was just so great to be back racing again. I really, really enjoyed it. But the national champs are coming up at the end of October, which, if you're a master swimmer in the UK, you will find everybody in Sheffield at the last week of October. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it's going to be great to be racing there again.
Yeah, and that includes obviously swimmers from Scotland, Wales, Ireland, because it's the United Kingdom Masters. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so anybody from those countries can go. Yeah.
And how many people would you expect there? Like, what's the?
Well, I know that they've slightly limited entries, I think, but they're going to do another entry in a week or so's time as well. So I mean, usually there's hundreds of swimmers there. I mean, you can often have over 100 people in an event, 150 people in an event in one particular age group sometimes. So whether they're going to allow that number or not, I'm not too sure, but as I say, usually the whole city of Sheffield is overtaken by master swimmers. Every hotel is filled with master swimmers. Wherever you go, there are master swimmers. So it really is a big event in this country for master swimming, and it's a great fun one too, which is why people keep going back.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. And do you schedule much dry land work into your training week? Strength and conditioning?
It's a good question. Yes, I have done. Am I reliable and consistent at doing it? Probably no, if I'm being honest. In lockdown, I did a huge amount actually, and that was something that was quite new that I did a lot of. We basically brought our swimming sessions onto land, and my husband and I spent every week in our front sitting room giving sessions to the Tri Club, trying to do land-based swimming work. I'm not doing nearly as much as I was doing in lockdown, but I am trying to do some things myself, because I do think it has made a real difference to my swimming doing it. So I'm trying to keep it going, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I much prefer being in the water.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what I was going to ask was, do you find that, and a little bit back to the psychology side of things, do you find being an athlete yourself helps you sort of have an empathy with the athletes that you deal with?
I think it does. I mean, I do work with a lot of swimmers, and I work for the national governing body Swim England. So swimming clients are a big portion of the athletes that I do work with, and I know that they certainly appreciate the fact that I have a swimming background. I think where it helps particularly is that I understand the language of swimming, the vocabulary. They can come in and say, oh, I broke sub 60 on 100 freestyle, and that means something to me, and so I think that particularly for swimmers is really, really important. But the fact that I've kind of gone through, I know what it's like getting stressed before a race, is exactly the same whether people are in swimming or whether they're walking out onto the cricket pitch, or they're shooting an arrow in archery. That actually there are a lot of common themes within sport. So having been part of sport, I guess I have that affinity to it. So I think for me, as well as a practitioner, I have more confidence in talking about performance environments as a result of the fact that I've spent a lot of time in them.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you touched on saying before that you were working with an athlete returned from Tokyo. Britain had an amazing Tokyo Olympics with swimming. What are you doing over there that's pushing you so far ahead? Because a few years ago, it wasn't quite like that.
We had it was amazing for the swimmers in Tokyo. Do I think there is a real buzz about the team. A lot of the athlete, the swimmers are of similar age. They a lot of them train together in groups, and I think there's a real sense of fun and competition amongst them. It's been tough for people to get places at Tokyo because there are so many swimmers who are kind of really right on that. Time-wise, they're all very, very similar. So it's been extremely competitive to actually get a place at the Olympics. And I think they're really good friends. I think there really is a real sense of kind of a community with the swimmers at the moment. And I think they're kind of feeding off each other. And it's clearly really been working.
Yeah, especially your 4x2 men's relay, that was amazing. And to have the depth there for the relay, yes. that's great.
Yeah, but again, that as I was saying, that they were the team that I was thinking of, because there were a lot of people who never went to Tokyo who easily could have got into that relay in any other year. So it's very hotly contested, that relay, and it was fabulous to watch.
Yeah, that was really good. It's going to make the Commonwealth Games next year very exciting.
It is very exciting. Yeah, no, really looking forward to that. And obviously it's in Birmingham in the UK. So that will be fantastic. People are already starting to talk about it.
Yeah. Will you be heading to watch that?
I hope so, yes. I'm hoping that I might get to go and work there. But if I'm not working there, then I'll definitely try and get tickets and see some of the swimming, because it would be fantastic to do that.
Yeah.
It's only an hour or so up the road from me, so very convenient.
So close.
Yeah, so close, yeah.
Did you get to London 2012? Did you see the swimming events there?
Do you know, I didn't, and it was a really big disappointment. I don't know if people will be aware, but there was a big problem with tickets, or trying to get tickets for London 2012. As a family, we sat down, we decided what we wanted to go and see. We spent ages deciding, and then the ticket allocation came out, and we had nothing. We literally we hadn't got any tickets, and we were so disappointed, because for me, it's been a lifelong dream to go and watch an Olympic Games. As a little girl, I watched the Olympics avidly. I absolutely loved it, and I was so disappointed. As it turned out, we did manage to I got some tickets through a friend to see some of the athletics, and we actually got to watch it on Super Saturday, which was when Britain did extremely well with Mo Farah, Greg Rutherford and Jessica Ennis, and it was absolutely amazing. So my children weren't able to go. We only got 2 tickets for it. So I did get to see something, but I didn't get to the pool. I didn't get to see any of the swimming, which was a big disappointment.
Yes. Yeah, it's so hard. I remember when we had the Olympics here in 2000, you had to go on a ballot and apply for everything. And I applied for every swimming session, and you actually had to pay your money up front. And for several months, you didn't know whether you got it, and you got a refund, obviously, if you didn't get the sessions that you wanted. But yeah, that was a lot of money to outlay to maybe not even get anything. And we did get one final session, which was amazing. And the highlight, the highlight of everything. And we saw some gold medals from Australia, and it was wonderful. So it's certainly it's an amazing thing going to the Olympics and watching as a spectator as well, certainly in your home country. Yeah. So.
Oh yes, I mean, I remember coming out of the stadium after the athletics, and everybody was just looking at each other going, I can't believe we've witnessed this. I can't believe we've witnessed this. And even now people talk about Super Saturday and how amazing it was at the Olympics. And so, you know, although we didn't get any other session, the one session that we did get was absolutely incredible, and a memory that will last my lifetime. It really was an amazing day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Helen, thank you so much for talking to us today and sharing your perspective about sports psychology and your journey as a master swimmer. It's been terrific connecting, and I think all the podcast listeners are going to love hearing all of the advice that you've given today.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you, Danielle. And keep swimming, everyone. It's such a great sport. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, take care, Helen.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.